Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting. This is a special meeting for the Common Sale Investment Group. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2022. We're going to get the meeting started at 6:42. Agenda, roll call, please.
We don't have a secretary.
We don't have a secretary. Would you, Mr. Mulder, or Mr. Tominelli?
I'll make a motion to
Thank
appoint
you.
Mr. Mulder to secretary.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
All right.
I don't know.
Okay, just a roll call?
Yep.
All right. I'm trying to remember how it made us started.
Sorry, I guess I could have deferred to you, because you had that position at one time, didn't you?
All right, member Bacha, excuse, member Parka, excuse, member Tominello,
Here?
member Devlin,
Here.
member Blum,
Here.
member Mulder here, and Chair Murray.
Present, thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please?
Excuse me, could you either turn the microphones on,
We don't have.
okay, or speak louder, because unlike other people, I'm a little hard of hearing.
Okay, we will do our best, but as I stated in the very beginning, we are without our sound system this evening.
I
So
didn't hear
we're
that.
gonna, yeah, we're
See,
gonna try.
I did not hear it.
Okay, we're gonna try and project, so
Thank you.
you're welcome. Approval of the agenda as presented, please.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Danielle, approved by Mike. Sorry, guys. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We don't have any minutes. Our first hearing and review, Mr. Mulder, would you please read?
Yes, case number 16-22-PUD, Common Sale Investment Group, 26755 Ballard.
Okay, is the applicant available?
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, can you please, generally, we would have you come to the podium,
I can
because
speak
there
to the
would be a
podium.
microphone.
Yeah, but that's okay, he'll take
I can do it.
Yeah,
And I'll speak loud enough for you, okay?
thank you very much.
You're very welcome. How is everybody today?
Warm.
Warm? Okay. Adam, do you have the PowerPoint? Okay, thank you so much.
And please let us know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Eric Toomey. I'm with Common Sale Investment Group, and behind me is Jim Pappas with Fusco Schaefer and Pappas, who is the architect, design architect, and architect of record. I am with the development company and represent this development project as a lead on the project. And also Cleveland Housing Network, who is sitting right over there. We have Cheryl representing, is also the co-developer on the project as well. And we're very excited for this opportunity to be in front of you. And also want to thank everybody for being here and to listen to this project and what we're proposing to do on 26755 Ballard Street. Am I okay? Can everybody hear me, just to make sure? You can hear me?
No,
Okay, no? You can't hear me.
that's why I came up here.
Okay, so I usually project quite loud. I'm actually told in the office to calm down, don't be so loud. So I'll try to be
Feel
quiet.
free.
Okay, so there you go. I'll be as loud as I can. Anyhow, we're here to talk. Can I go through the presentation?
Please do.
Is
Your
that
name
fair?
again, please.
Huh?
Your name?
My name is Eric,
Yeah,
and my last name is Toomey,
you too, thank
like
you.
socket Toomey.
Yeah.
And just so you know, for anyone in the gallery, there will be minutes for tonight, and so you all have the opportunity to have a copy of the minutes, and all of this information will be present there, just,
Where will the minutes be?
just to let you know.
Where will the minutes be?
He'll be on the website.
I'm sorry?
On the website.
Yes, it'll be on the website.
The planning commission website?
I can't understand.
The Planning
Yes.
Commission website.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, the township and the planning commission portion. Thank you. Mr. Toomey, go ahead.
Yeah, great. Well, let's just dig right in. Well, you guys probably all know where it's located. So this is just an overview of the project. So you can see highlighted in red right there is the actual site the subject site that we're speaking of. The use that's currently proposed is senior affordable on a 5.2 acre site approximately. When we say senior affordable, this is what's called a low-income housing tax credit project, so LIHTC, that's administered by the state of Michigan. The Michigan State Housing Development Authority administers these tax credits as a way in which to create affordable housing for various populations throughout the state. What we're proposing on this project is 80 units, a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms. Estimated investment as of today is approximately $21 million. The proposed AMI summary, so that's important to note, is also known as the area of median income. And I apologize for the acronyms. Acronyms are like all over the place in these projects, but notwithstanding, what we're proposing is a range between 30% of area median income to 60% of area median income. Majority of the units will be at the 60% area median income. Generally speaking, on average, this is a resident that probably makes between $27,500 to $32,000 annually. So that's who is your typical demographic here. This is independent living, so that's important to note. This is not assisted living, this is not memory care living. This is housing that is age restricted for folks 55 and older. Typically, that's a resident that would be in the age bracket of about 72 years old. As I said before, the proposed financing vehicle to subsidize these rents to create this affordability is the 9% low-income housing tax credits that are administered by the Michigan State Housing Development Authority. In addition to that, what is typical for projects like that to continue to subsidize this on an ongoing basis is what's called a payment in lieu of taxes. So a payment in lieu of taxes is a mechanism that reduces real estate taxes to continue to allow the project to be affordable over the duration of affordability, which would be a 45-year period. What we are asking for at the moment is a rezoning to PUD, obtaining of the site plan approval that would happen in a parallel path with the approval of the PUD. What's not listed here is for senior housing within the zoning code. Is a special land use permit. So with the PUD and that rezoning would allow for the approval of all three of those mechanisms. Next slide, please. So who are we? We're coming to your township, your home, and it's important to understand and introduce ourselves, in my opinion, as to who we are, as to your hopeful neighbor in this project. CommonSale Investment Group is a owner, operator, and developer of senior housing and multifamily throughout the Midwest. We operate about 80 communities throughout 8 states, a sizable portfolio. Cleveland Housing Network, that Cheryl represents here, is an expert and a nonprofit in affordable housing based in Cleveland, but also has offices in Detroit and the state of Michigan. They were very successful in the last tax credit round for a project in the city of Detroit, and they truly are our co-developer on this project. So you have a mix between a private developer and a nonprofit developer to effectuate this project. O'Brien Construction Company is a general contractor, construction manager, been in the business for 60 years, recently purchased by CommonSale Investment Group. So we are a fully vertical integrated development company. We have construction, we have development, and we have operations. However, Cleveland Housing Network would be the property manager on this project, which would be on site. So we would have a fully staffed project with a property manager, assistant property manager, and maintenance staff as well. O'Brien has been in business for 60 years, 60 years of which have mostly been in multifamily construction, both affordable and market rate. Fusco, Schaefer, and Pappas, Jim is here, representing them. It's Jim Pappas, so he's the P at the end of those 3 letters, more acronyms for you. Jim is an expert in affordable housing, and an expert in design of not just affordable, but also market rate apartments. We also have Giffords Webster. Mike is here representing them as the civil engineer and the landscape architect. So between the development companies, the construction company, the architect, and the civil landscape, we are all here representing the team that would build this project if approved. What we wanted to do is to kind of show you what the demographic summary is of the senior population in Harrison Township and how that broadly speaks to the demand and the need for affordable housing for the senior population. So the population in Harrison Township is about 25,000 people. Between 2010 and 2020, that was about a 1.4% increase. That is just below number 2 in the first box. The median household income for 65 and older is approximately $47,000 a year. The percent of the population of that 25,000 that makes up seniors that are 65 and older is about 20%. The percent of households with seniors, so that's people, they might not have their own home, they might be living with family, makes up close to 30%. What's important to note, and I think I want to qualify this, is the average within a 20-minute drive radius, the rents to live in an independent senior facility is approximately $3,300. What we're proposing on average are rents that are between $500 a month to about $1,200 a month, depending on the income and depending on the unit type. So what we're providing is where you have incomes that might not support rents of $3,300 a month in independent living, we are providing a product type that provides the opportunity for folks that can't afford that to live here and stay in Harrison Township. And so I think that's a very important component as you have an aging population. You have 30% of the population that is seniors that is making approximately $47,000 a year in income. You can see the Social Security and retirement income, it's even less than that of what's being brought in with respect to that. So this is truly what we believe, there's demand and there's also a need. And I think that's the broader approach in terms of that public benefit that we're bringing to the project. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan. Really this is probably more of Jim's slide, but I'll take it for a second. So the current zoning is RM1. What that current zoning allows is multiple family. What we're proposing is to rezone it into PUD. There's a few reasons why. First is the future land use map in the 2015 waterfront redevelopment plan calls for this parcel as well as the St. John's Hospital parcel to be rezoned to planned development. And it specifically calls out the opportunity for diverse housing opportunities. And so on this project in particular, we're providing that diverse housing opportunities. And within the redevelopment plan, it states specifically senior housing or housing for care. What else do we have on this site that's somewhat exciting for the development? We have 3,400 square feet of interior amenity space. This is to be programmed. We don't know exactly what we're going to provide, but we're going to provide resident services. And we're going to provide unique resident services that's not being provided currently within Harrison Township. In addition to that, we have exterior amenities. We have a porte cochere. You can see that in the front of the site where, right, if I could had a pointer, which I should have brought, you can see right there, move over in gray, that's the porte cochere. We have a dog park at the very top. We have an 11,000 square foot interior courtyard, and we also have a community garden. In addition to that, as I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the Tucker Center, the senior center, is right on the same street, so there really is sort of some synergies and some adjacencies with respect to this proposed development and the senior center that's on the same block. Overall, we've been very thoughtful, as you'll see in this presentation that Jim will go over, of how we're incorporating nautical themes into this project. It calls out throughout all planning documents the desire for a nautical theme, and so we took some fun photos, that precedent images across the Northeast and across the state of Michigan of sort of our inspiration for what that could look like. Next slide, please. This is just a typical upper floor plan and first floor plan. You can see on the right, the first floor plan includes the porte cochere, where you enter into the common areas. You can see a mix of the 2 bedrooms and the 1 bedrooms, 2 means of ingress and egress at the very top of the U. And then you can see in the typical upper floor plan that as well. It's a 3-story building, that's important to note. And Jim will go into more detail about the elevations in just a moment. Next slide, please. I'll pass it over to Jim to kind of talk about our overall design and go from there.
Thank you. I'm Jim Pappas. I'm with Fusco Schaefer and Pappas Architects. Welcome back to Harrison Township. I was also involved in the HEPA project a few years back, as well as just to note, the people at HEPA have hired our firm again. It's time for renovation, so we're going to be renovating that building. So just a few notes. When we were given the task of designing this building with a nautical theme, we looked for guidance. And so what we did, we looked for images of coastal architecture. We felt that appropriate. And you can see on the screen some homes, some larger buildings. So we tried to pick up elements that we saw and tie it into the design. If I could get the next slide, please. As you can see, the lower slide is the south elevation that faces the street. The porte cochere to the right portion of the slide, so residents can be dropped off out of the rain and snow. We've incorporated elements onto the building that pick up some of the nautical theme on both ends of the building. Because of the length of the building, we've actually broken up the facade so that no vertical surface is more than about 120 feet in total length, and they're sheared spaces so they break back. In addition, on the exterior design, initially we had looked at a flat roof on this building, but the more we looked at it, we felt that the pitched roof was more of a residential character and more in line with the nautical theme and coastal architecture that we were trying to achieve here. On the exterior, we've incorporated stone along the base of the building with a belt course of stone around the perimeter. We've also indicated that the stone undulates up and down in different locations to accent the important architectural features near the entries and the corners of the building. Siding, also there are Juliet-style balconies on the majority of the units and patios on the first floor. The elevation that you see below is the west elevation. I can see the next slide, please. And then, so we have the east elevation, again on the left side of the image, you can see the porte cochere. And then the north elevation that actually would be facing away from the street, and you're looking into the courtyard in this image. So as part of the PUD process, can I get the next slide, please? There was there are some requirements on the PUD, and we have a few deviations. One was the minimum of a 40-acre site, which is an awfully large site. Our particular site is 5.2 acres, so we're requesting a deviation from the PUD on that item. With regard to the height, the 32-foot minimum, this was one of the reasons we initially had looked at a flat roof, because we'd be below that height. However, we didn't think it appropriate, so we are asking for a small deviation in the height of the building based on the measurement of the height of the building to the center line of the pitched roof. Maximum length of the building, there's a limitation of 150 feet. The overall length of the building is 215 feet. However, there's no flat plane on the facade that is near that length. The maximum flat plane is about 125 feet. So there are some definite undulations in the facade.
May I please request you all to turn your cell phones off?
Yes,
Or
doing it right
please?
this second, sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
So as you saw in the designs of the elevations, we've undulated the facades to break up those long flat planes. The minimum landscape area, 50 feet in the rear, is a 20 feet for landscaping. Landscaping screening, we do have a buffer around the perimeter. And then on the berm requirement, we are suggesting that a berm is not used, specifically that we've had issues with berms on the perimeter. We are providing for a screening that includes a mixture of deciduous, coniferous, and bushes along the edges of the perimeter, screening the properties to the north and south. When we've used berms in the past, we've had some issues with water ending up on neighbors' properties. So we're suggesting a heavily landscaped screening. Density requirements, we are proposing 80 units that require 474,000 square feet of land, and the current site is 248,000 square feet. And on the parking requirements, we're requesting a deviation of 20, simply because the proposed housing is for seniors. We think the parking requirements are excessive. We have room on the site that we could land bank if that's a desired commitment from the developer for the planning commission. But with seniors, we find that one-to-one parking is more than adequate. So I'd be happy to turn it back over to Eric, and he can answer some additional, or make additional presentation on a few slides.
Thank you, Mrs. Evans.
Just two more slides, then we'll get through this. So I wanted to, in 2015, in 2010 you have a master plan from 2010. It is commonplace that every 5 years in the state of Michigan that master plan is updated. So what we're doing, and I don't know if the most recent master plan has been updated, I don't think that it has, but what has happened since 2010 to 2015 is this waterfront redevelopment plan, which ultimately facilitated the DDA and the DDA TIF plan. And so what you're seeing here on the future land use map on the left-hand side is our site along with the St. John site. You can see that the future land use map is calling it out as planned development, which is exactly what we're trying to rezone the project to. So what were the goals of the plan redevelopment that you see at the very top is the redevelopment of larger sites into new productive uses. I'm sure since you guys are all here, you're familiar with the site. Today it's a fallow green field site next to a hospital that is currently vacant. And so what we're proposing to do on the smaller parcel within that PUD area is to make it into a productive use. In addition to that, it is called out, the subject site, to be redeveloped into either single-family and multifamily, including senior housing or senior care facilities. So based on that master plan that's been created, we are following directly in line with that use. There are very specific goals within this waterfront redevelopment plan, several of which we meet. I didn't list all of them, I couldn't fit them all on the slide. The ones that I couldn't fit on the slide are ones that we do not address, but we address probably 70% of them. One of them is the waterfront heritage, so capitalize on waterfront district location and heritage. You can see that we are trying to capitalize on that to create some vibrancy for the senior community, just a ways from Jefferson. Environmental protection, strive for protection of environmental resources. We check that box, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. Residential living, promote viable, safe, and diverse housing. It's exactly what we're promoting here. Activity and vibrancy, establish a 4-season waterfront district. This is bringing additional population to really create that vibrancy, also to create more demand for the senior facility that's on the block. Visual aesthetics, superior site design standards with nautical heritage. I think what Jim just presented, based on what our team believes is superior site design standards, and it does speak to the nautical heritage. Administrative decisions, well, this is more so about how we go about this process. I think the last PUD that was done was in 1993. So here we are, trying to do it again. And so predictable and fair and transparent outcomes. And I think that is the purpose of this meeting today and the subsequent ones that happen thereafter. Public collaboration, encourage community and stakeholder collaboration. Well, the community's here and the stakeholders are there and we're here as well. And so we're trying to seek that collaboration through this PUD process. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of words, I do apologize, but I want to go into what I think are the public benefits. A PUD, often we're asking for these deviations. Those deviations have trade-offs, and those trade-offs result into a public benefit that result in a positive project and the rezoning into a PUD. We have housing, and we're promoting viable and safe housing and different housing opportunities through the creation of 80 affordable senior housing units. The future land use, we are in direct conformance with what's in the 2015 plan. Improve water quality and stormwater management. We're doing a loop system that provides redundancy within the existing municipal water system. In doing so, we also will provide improved water quality for the site and for the township as a whole. Exterior design elements we touched upon. We are designing this in the spirit of the nautical heritage. Recreational amenities on site. We have exterior courtyard, we have a dog park, we have community gardens. And even that, in the interior, we're going to program it to provide certain types of amenities that could be recreational for the folks that live there. And building sustainability. One of the things that the Michigan State Housing Development Authority requires is that we meet certain green standards in terms of air quality, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of water quality, using certain materials, having certain R ratings with respect to insulation. Right now, what we're proposing is to do what's called the National Green Building System Green Silver, which is what MSHDA requires, which basically allows for and facilitates and incentivizes a greener building than what is conventionally built. And so we believe that we are promoting sustainability through this development, both in terms of energy efficiency, indoor air quality, and water efficiency. With that, that's our presentation. We thank you for having us here, and thank you for your participation, and look forward to your comments as we move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Toomey.
You're
Appreciate
welcome. Yes.
Mr.
Would you,
Pappas, thank you.
would you like us to stay here, or would you like to sit down?
You can go ahead and have a seat.
Okay.
And I neglected to bring this up at the very beginning, so I'm going to ask Adam Young if he would please provide the appropriate and correct explanation of a PUD and what we just went through this evening, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, my name is Adam Young. I'm the township planner here, and in that capacity I serve the Planning Commission and try and provide direction, make sure that they are following their procedures and rules per the zoning ordinance and the master plan. I wanted to let the Planning Commission know, and those in the audience as well, just give an idea of what a planned unit development is and the procedure that it would require in order to walk through this process. The applicant has indicated correctly that the property is currently zoned RM1, which is a multiple family residential district. That would allow senior housing, such as what they're proposing, but they had explained that there were a number of items that they would, they cannot comply with, and so they're looking for the flexibility that's afforded through the planned unit development process. A planned unit development is permitted within the RM1 district as a special land use, that's what the ordinance calls it. Ultimately, it would have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission, a recommendation that you would ultimately provide to the Township Board. So the Township Board would have to ultimately approve the planned unit development once it would, if it got through the Planning Commission stage in the process. The process is a two-step process at the Planning Commission level. The Township Board, I suppose, would be a third step. Tonight is the first step in the process. The ordinance calls this the conceptual review stage. The ordinance says that this stage is the opportunity for the applicant to present a concept plan to the Planning Commission, to allow the Planning Commission to weigh in on the plan, to ask questions of the applicant, and for you to share comments and feedback with the applicant. You are not asked, the ordinance actually doesn't allow you to make any decisions this evening. What the ordinance suggests that you do is to, it says the Planning Commission is required to review the plan and offer comments on the plan as it relates to the township's development policies and make appropriate comments or suggestions concerning the proposed development scheme. Per the ordinance, this phase shall not be construed to require approval of the development plan by the township. Further, the concept plan is only intended to be used as a general guide to both the applicant and the township. After tonight, if the applicant would like to proceed, they would need to make a second application for what the ordinance calls a formal planned unit development review. Once the application would be received by the township, a public hearing would be noticed in the newspaper. Property owners within 300 feet would receive a letter, and a formal public hearing would be held by the Planning Commission. So that would occur at a subsequent meeting, only to be determined after formal application is made. So at that point is the legal opportunity, or the opportunity for the public to speak their thoughts about this project at the public hearing. The Planning Commission could make a decision that evening, or could make a decision at a later meeting, but ultimately after the public hearing is held, you could then make your recommendation to the Township Board. It could be a recommendation for approval, it could be a recommendation for denial, and ultimately that would go to the Township Board. They would have the final say. So that's the process. I did have a review letter for you that kind of provided, outlined this process a little bit more in depth. The couple of things that I wanted to note, the applicant did bring it up that for a residential planned unit development, what this is a residential planned unit development, the ordinance normally says that it should be a minimum of 40 acres in size. But the ordinance does give the Planning Commission the ability to allow for a property that is smaller in size. And in doing so, the ordinance suggests that you consider three things. Consider the density of the proposed planned unit development and whether it's consistent with what would be expected from a development under the conventional standards of the ordinance. It also suggests you consider what does the master plan have to say about the planned unit development. Is it consistent with the master plan? The third, it's kind of long, I'll just read it. It asks that you consider, is the property located at the intersection of two roads, or is it situated in such a manner that transitional or higher intensity uses are located around the majority of the perimeter of the proposed development? So we've provided comments to you. We've talked a little bit about the density. Obviously, they're asking for more than what the RM1 district would allow. Related to the master plan, the applicant did touch on the 2010 master plan and the 2015 master plan. I commented in that as well. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that you know, and the audience and the applicant, that in order to even qualify for a planned unit development, the property owner would need to provide at least 25% of the area of that property to be preserved for open space. They do show an open space area there, they don't provide the calculations necessarily. So I just wanted to bring it up and make sure that they're aware of that. I'm sure that they are. One of the other things that I mentioned in the letter is that I don't see any accommodation for stormwater, such as a detention pond or something like that. And I wanted to make sure that they're aware that a detention pond would not count toward an open space area. You have to have a detention pond either way. What we're looking to do is have something that wouldn't otherwise be provided to have that 25% open space for the benefit of the public or for the residents of that development. The one decision that I believe you should definitely weigh in on is the last thing that I mentioned in my letter. The ordinance says that for a planned unit development, that the Planning Commission may require a development impact statement. A development impact statement is kind of a narrative, a report that discusses items, and I've got pulled up in the zoning ordinance. It discusses, it provides information about traffic. It also asks for them to comment on land use impacts, to comment on the potential impact of this development on public utilities, the potential impact of this development on public services, potential impact of this development on traffic, and other study items. So maybe you would like to hear about additional items, maybe the environmental quality or wetlands or something like that on the site. So just make sure to share your comments and your thoughts. Ultimately, they need to have direction as to whether a development impact should be submitted at the next stage. With that said, I'll turn it back over to you. If you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to try and answer them.
Thank you very much. That was very inclusive. I appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Young? Any clarification questions?
If I may, Mr. Young, can you please talk about public benefit? So when we talk about public benefit, which is a byproduct of the PUD, is a public benefit specifically for the new planned development, or is that actually for the public? So maybe we can enlighten some of the commissioners.
Sure. Yeah, I'll pull that language. I'll just kind of generally explain it to you. I'll go to the language and maybe I'll ask to provide to restate the specific language in the ordinance. But for the most part, in exchange, in a sense, for allowing flexibility to have a little bit taller than what the ordinance would allow, or more density, or the other things that they mentioned that they're asking for the flexibility on. The idea behind the planning development is that you could do that, but you would need to see some sort of benefit from the project. So how does, by allowing that flexibility, how does the township as a whole, that could include the public, general public of the community, as well as the residents of the proposed development, what benefits would they gain from this project? So I would say that it's both. There are some things that you could argue that providing the courtyard and the dog park would be a benefit for the residents. Maybe a public benefit, it could be the proximity to the senior center and the fact that might result in increased users at the senior center. They could offer other public benefits. Maybe it's providing a pedestrian connection from this development to the senior center. That's something that I brought up in my letter as maybe something that would be important. If you expect them to use the senior center, maybe help provide financing to construct a pathway or a sidewalk that would connect to that. There could be other avenues for public benefit. Ultimately, they would need to kind of flesh that out and provide you the specifics with that, like who could use the dog park? Is that for the residents? Is that for the public at large? They could help clarify some of those issues. But hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does, and I just wanted thank you for making that clear. And I just want for the benefit of the other commissioners, so they're aware of the requirement of public benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Tomlin.
Yeah, I had the exact same question when I was listening to the presentation, and I know the public benefit, or at least what I heard about, was, you know, the courtyard, the dog park, recreational opportunities, but it seemed to me that was all for the residents. So I guess I would like more clarification of what public benefit is anticipated for the Harrison Township residents that will not be residents.
And just to that point, I will pull open the kind of introductory language of the planned unit development section of the zoning ordinance. And, you know, what you're looking to achieve, again, by allowing for some flexibility in the regulation of the land. It's seeking to achieve more creative approaches to development that would take advantage of the special characteristics of the land that would otherwise not be possible if they complied with the conventional standards of the ordinance. Benefits, these are benefits to the community by having a development that is innovative in land use and variety and design, the layout and type of structures, that might preserve significant natural features, that achieves economy and efficiency in the use of land, natural resources, energy, the provision of public services and utilities, that would require the preservation of useful open space, permitting flexibility. So this is kind of what the ordinance would say. These are, you know, this is why the planned unit development option exists and what you would expect to achieve by allowing one, two, or no.
Thank you, Mr. Young. So, Mr. Toomey, let's just go ahead and put the question out there. What is your expected public benefit that is open to the residents of the township and not specifically designed for the residents of the potential community?
Yeah, I think, I appreciate that question. It's a great question. Not talking about the site plan specifically, I don't know if people follow sort of the housing shortage in the United States that we currently have. It's not unique to just Harrison Township. It's not unique to southeastern Michigan. It's a national issue. We do not have enough housing. We do not have enough affordable housing. We haven't built single-family homes at a pace that we need. And so I would say, broadly speaking, the provision of affordable housing for an aging population is a public benefit. We are trying, in our attempt, to build housing for folks that could be possibly a vulnerable population. And the public benefit is offering that housing opportunity to folks. And so I would say, outside of the components of the site plan, the proposed development itself is a public benefit. And so that is where I would contend that whether it's for the resident that lives there, the future resident that lives there, or the community at large, we are facilitating more housing, creating more supply at an affordable rate, where currently it is unaffordable. And so that is the public benefit in our opinion.
Thank you. Additionally, Mr. Young had mentioned the qualification of 25% open space. You do not currently provide a calculation on the proposed preliminary site.
Right, we will provide that. We do have 25% open space, and we'll provide those calculations. Additionally, he mentioned the stormwater detention. We are planning for stormwater detention on site. That's incorporated in. It will also include not just detention, but water quality control, which is required. One of the other public benefits that Mr. Toomey mentioned earlier has to do with the connection of the water main. We are looping the water main and connecting it to the property to the north, so that will help the existing water service in this area with the connection through it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Young. May I please ask for the gallery to remain quiet, please? Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners?
I have a question, I guess, to Adam, on your number 7 in the development impact statement. I mean, there's quite the history, obviously, to this area. And one of the things is the traffic study. My question, I guess, when the hospital was open, the traffic up and down Ballard would be significantly different than it's been recently. And then we have the Tucker Park, and we have the development there, and the traffic there is probably, so the hospital traffic's less than it was years ago, obviously, but the Tucker Park is probably more. How does this traffic study work with all of these changes that have been made in that area?
Yeah, maybe the applicant can share if they have plans to prepare one, or what analysis maybe they're underway in terms of traffic. A traffic study in this case certainly would look at historical traffic counts, records of, traffic counts if there are any for this street. Obviously, it's not a main street, it's a two-way street, gravel in front of the, immediately in front of this property right now as well. So it's an unimproved road. The pavement ends right kind of at the beginning of this property. So a traffic impact study would include numbers that show what this potential use would generate. So they might rely on standards from published sources like AASHTO, the American Society of Traffic Engineers or Transportation Engineers, for what a senior living and independent living development of this nature would require. I know that for a senior project that the trips are going to be less than what would be required for an equivalent, let's say a multiple family or even single family. So for each senior unit, in comparison to a multifamily unit or an apartment unit or even a single family dwelling unit, there's going to be considerably fewer trips that would be made, even fewer residents that might even have a car necessarily. So we'd want them and a traffic study to provide information about that. The hospital itself, I guess I don't fully know the history, like when it closed down. Clearly, when it was in operation, the traffic was much more significant, and maybe they could look to find some historical records of that and compare. But the site, this property and the adjacent property is zoned for multifamily right now, which would allow for a considerable number of units to be developed kind of by right under the current ordinance. That obviously would result in increased traffic. Naturally, new development would do that. So.
Yeah, and I guess the way I'm looking at it, anyways, from a traffic study, in something with a stable pattern over time. You look at if this development comes in, what is the anticipated increase to what's been stable over time?
Right.
Here, we can, if we want a traffic study, we can say, okay, if this is approved, the increase in traffic is expected to be X, whatever it might be. What I'm wrestling with is what you compare that with.
Right. All you can do right now is compare it with how the road is at this very moment. With the hospital that is not in existence, right? They probably would need to look at, what's the traffic on Jefferson at the intersection? How is the stoplight currently accommodating traffic up and down Ballard, and provide what would be the impact of this development on left turns and at Jefferson as well. So.
Well, and the statistical analysis of past recent senior housing of this size and.
Yeah, they would, right, that's kind of where that's what entities like AASHTO do. They catalog these sites throughout the country to kind of quantify on average what type of traffic would they generate. Even as specific as like peak hours, like when the peak hours would be for use of this. So it's not like an office building that's 7 to 8 and then 4:30 to 5:30. I think I remember seeing for senior housing the peak hours are quite different. It's mid-morning and then maybe mid-afternoon, I think. So
Weekends when families visit
Yeah.
and so on.
right.
Yeah, they generate that level of service
Mhm.
for the category of road, usually the ones I've seen.
Generally for the development impact statement, the traffic study I think would be the most kind of extensive component of it. In the ones that we've seen before, we've had a number of development impact statements submitted to us. It's usually a narrative that covers a page or half a page on each of those items: land use, natural features, public utilities. I think it's a valid thing for you to have in order to help make an informed decision.
Yeah, I agree. The public utilities and public services hit, and the environmental impact as well. But the traffic is a big deal with the boat launch not too far across the street on Jefferson, and the activity on the corner. Okay, any other questions regarding the developmental impact statement?
Not the statement, but could the applicant walk us through how they got to that 80 unit density?
That's a good question, yes.
I mean, and is there a possibility for less? Would the project still work?
Mr. Pappas, Mr. Toomey?
Okay, can I address the traffic item first?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
could
okay.
project, please.
Sure. We analyzed the site, a traffic engineer analyzed the site, and based on, if it was a multifamily use, which is currently zoned, you can build 38 dwelling units there on that site under its current zoning. Based on multifamily usage, that would provide for 319 trip generations per day. Based on a senior housing, 80 units creates 256 trip generations. The trip generation is every time someone enters or leaves the site. So half of that is the number of cars going in and out. So the fact is the 80 units of senior provide about 20% less than if it was allowed to be built as multifamily under its current zoning.
Where's that information from?
That's, the documentation is from the resource that he had mentioned.
Yes, the gallery? No questions from you at this time. That information will come at the time of the public hearing.
I'm sorry, what was that first, the 38 units under the current, what was the trip generation for that? I missed that.
319.
319.
Okay, thank you.
Like 316, right?
319 to
319 and 256.
256.
I'll just add to that, that you mentioned what's the basis of comparison, and I get that, I think there's two ways of looking at it. It's what it is today, I would agree, but if we were coming to you not to rezone the site and we were to build by right 38 units today, someone could come today with a site plan, you could approve the site plan without the rezoning, and you get 319 trip generations versus what we're proposing. So by right, we are less as the rezone than what would be by right today. So I just want to make sure that's sort of heard. The second thing is, I think you asked a question about why 80 units. So the State Housing Authority issues these 9% tax credits twice a year, one in October and one in April. They're allocated through the IRS. So not to get nerdy with everybody, but it's through the Section 42 code of the IRS. And so what that does is every single state throughout the United States gets a certain allocation of tax credits. A project can get up to $15 million worth of tax credits. So when you want to be efficient in how you utilize the tax credits, it's important to maximize the amount of density to be efficient with the tax credits so that the project is financially feasible. So we noted before that there's a $21 million investment, and the tax credits support up to $15 million of that. I think what it does is it allows for the developer and the operator of the building to be able to subsidize the rents, because they don't have to put as much debt on the project. So when we talk about being tax credit efficient in the affordable housing space, maximizing the site to 80 units maximizes our allocation of low-income housing tax credits to provide for the below-market rents that we're proposing on the project.
Are you able to still use that allocation with some market rate units included?
Currently, the operations associated with this, we do not believe it's in the best interest. We would have to then have more units than just the 80 if we wanted to have a mixed income deal to make it financially viable. So we'd have to further increase the density and further ask for greater deviations.
So this facility is being expressed as a senior independent living 55 age plus,
Plus.
correct?
Yep.
And no plan to modify that, change that in the future if 55 plus, if there's not enough people to fill? You only fill 12 units, 20 units? If you're left with a substantial number of empty units?
Yeah, so currently, the way that it truly is, it's a competitive scoring process. So the competitive scoring process states that you have to have a certain target and you have to have a certain range. And the range that we have is between the 30 to the 60% of AMI. We believe there's enough demand and the demographics support that range that we currently have. That is the risk that the developer takes. But we will sign what's called a land use restriction agreement, known as a LORA, that will be between ourselves and the state of Michigan, that will state that we have to keep in for 45 years affordable at these rates with this unit mix and this affordability mix. So if we don't do that, then we are what's called a recapture event and we're out of compliance. So that's, right now, to answer your question, we would have to keep it between that 30 to 60% of AMI for a duration of 45 years. And I want to point out that's important is you're thinking, well, 45 years, and when are you going to improve the property? Well, AHEPA is a good example of this. At the end of year 15, there's another opportunity non-competitively to get additional tax credits to preserve the affordability but upgrade the apartments and upgrade the exterior, upgrade the interiors. And then in year 30, there's another opportunity, and you go do it again. And then in year 45, you can either do it again, or you can turn it into a market rate building. You can do what you will with the building if you so choose. But there's a 45-year restriction, and there's 3 tranches to which you have opportunities to continually improve the building and continue on an ongoing basis. You reserve dollars so that you're improving as you're going every single year and maintaining.
So let me just dive into a little bit of detail for potential senior independent living. Something I recently have been reviewing for my own family, so I'm comfortable speaking to these things. Are these units going to be, will they have availability 24/7 to staff who can accommodate if they should need? A lot of independent facilities have the pull cord safety system for those who are independent but may need a level of care and control. Well, is any of that being thought of or planned for or in the future offering?
It's, as far as how we're designing the interiors of the units themselves, it's a little bit early in the process to be doing so. We will, if we keep moving forward in this process, we'll move into that design phase where we start laying out the units and providing those types of features.
Well, the price difference is significant with and without, so that's
Yes.
the reason I'm asking the question.
So, I believe we'll provide various tenant services that will provide the type of care that's required within independent living, without a doubt, and we would take, suggestions as to what we should provide. Cleveland Housing Network operates tons of units in Ohio for seniors specifically. Common Sale Investment Group has many different in-house companies that provide operations for the market rate stuff, and we're exploring the possibility of providing those same services or similar comparable services within this building.
So have you thought about the pedestrian connection to the senior center?
I think it's a great suggestion.
Please,
What was that?
please. Did you want to expand on that at all?
I think there's true adjacencies. We've really been focused on the site itself, but the purpose of this, I believe, is to take in consideration the suggestions that you're providing to us, and I truly believe that is, Jim we believe it's a good idea, and we would consider that suggestion.
Yeah, that's a significant, I'm not sure what the actual distance is between the edge of this location and to the entrance of Tucker Park.
But there also is the opportunity of providing, transportation services within. So I would say, to the extent that we can provide that, we would provide that. And if it's a distance for someone that doesn't have the ability to walk, would we be able to provide that bus transit to it? We could, yes.
For public benefit, have you considered paving the road to the end of the property line?
To the end of the property line? Yeah, that is currently proposed, yes. From there to the road.
So the gravel to the end of the property?
So I would say to the property line to property line.
So I understand this is conceptual, it's not a full site plan with a ton of dimensions on it. You've provided also the elevations, but you're also talking about a 3-story building with a pitched roof. Do you have any comparisons to basically the tree line or surrounding buildings, how much this building will stand above the surrounding properties?
We currently don't, but we are open to doing massing studies to provide that for you.
Also, it's conceptual. So that items like the dumpster location being in front of the dog park and the garden space.
Go back. I think that dumpster, right, that's not the main dumpster, that's just,
No,
that's an
I can
access
address
dumpster,
that.
so you
That-
can go to the screen wall where the
Yep.
dumpster
there is a dumpster there, but that is really just for large items. Because it's a senior building, we will have an interior trash chute
Okay.
and a compactor. If you see that walk that's just north of where it says screen wall there, that's where a truck will actually come and pick up that. But we put a dumpster typically on a site like this, just for like big things that can't fit into the trash chute.
Okay.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that brings to light that area of the parking lot that is now not dedicated to parking. There is the discussion or the mention that 80 units, and I believe you had mentioned 1 per 3 units, 1 parking place per 3 residents. One per unit.
Yeah,
One,
deviation.
1 parking place per unit, and then 1 for each employee, but yet there's only 80 spaces listed on this particular piece
Yeah,
that I'm looking at.
That's a good comment.
So how many employees are you expecting to have?
Most likely on site today, we would have during lease up would be a little bit different. So you'd probably have a property manager today, and by the way, as far as getting into operations, this is proposed. But most likely you'd have a full-time property manager. You would have during lease up, a full-time leasing consultant. It would probably go down to a part-time leasing consultant that would also serve as a assistant property manager, and then we would have a maintenance person on staff with the possibility of having a roving part-time maintenance person. So in totality, between 3 to 5 employees.
3 to 5 employees
Yeah.
per day, full-time?
Yeah, great comment, honestly. We missed that, so it is a possibility to put in 5 additional spaces to accommodate those folks.
And are you contemplating having an in-house eatery, an in-house cafeteria style, anything of that nature?
To date, it has not been programmed, so we would take any suggestions that you think would be beneficial for the project, and we can see how we can incorporate into the design.
So I had a question with the screening.
Yeah.
The screening runs down both sides, but around, I guess would be the the south and the east side, right up to the current hospital. There's no screening around that area. Is there a reason why and I understand it's just conceptual, but the area that's supposed to be a dog park and garden area, kind of a open space recreational area for the residents, is not screened to the adjacent property?
We can look at that. We had initially, had more concern about the single family to the west, and then the building, actually, the existing building to the east. There is additional screening as well that's not shown on this plan, was shown on the landscape plan. On the south portion of the building is required as well. We can take a look at that to see if there's possibly a little more screening around that location. And to the north, it's heavily wooded all the way across our site.
Yes.
But that's again, the purpose of this is to take in your feedback. Honestly, we will incorporate that, okay?
And so, again, it's brought up the areas there, the dog park is in the garden area, is that strictly intended to be for residents, or would any of the amenities on site be open to the public?
Right now, it's currently intended just for the residents. There might be we got to think about safety, you have to think about folks that are coming through the parking lot that are the public. We just have to think through that operationally, but today, it's currently for the residents of the site.
Understood. And then, kind of off topic, not about the site plan, but going back to kind of the income of the residents. So is there I know we were talking about the price compared to the market price. Is it income limited? Do they have to meet certain income restrictions to be?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So not
We
anyone
will
can
be
just
audit-
come in?
We will be audit compliance if they do not meet those requirements, and it's based on the unit type.
Okay.
So if you're at 30% of AMI and you're in a 1-bedroom, your income has to be this, and the rent that you charge has to be so X and Y. If you're a 60% AMI individual, your income has to be this, and your rents charged have to be this, and you cannot deviate from that. Now, HUD publishes, so the Housing and Urban Development publishes annually what those rents can be. So the developer doesn't dictate it, the operator doesn't dictate it, the state of Michigan, for that matter, doesn't dictate it, and they do it on a county-by-county basis. So you are compelled to what the federal government is telling you what the rent should be. And that's not unique to Michigan, that's the 50 states.
Oh, I appreciate the explanation. I wasn't sure if this was just open to any senior or there were certain conditions.
There
that
will
they had
be,
to
it
meet.
will be open to seniors within that sort of income bracket.
Okay.
So on the letter of intent documentation mentions 7 to 950 square feet units, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. But the site data indicates, I believe it's 6 to 8.
Yeah, that's a discrepancy.
Which one is it?
Still in flux right now, as we currently have conceived, Jim, I think it's about 650 square feet for a 1 and about 825 square feet for a 2.
I think that 650 and 850.
650 and 850.
650 and 850?
Yeah, but as we're early in design, so that is subject to change over time as we continue to design the building.
And just to take it one step further, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms?
1 bedroom, 1 bath right now, and 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, but again, subject to change. Maybe we can do 2 by 1.5, something to that effect, but that's, as we said, we haven't designed the units quite yet.
As far as the site lighting, would this be like a normal apartment building where it's dark at night? Would there be parking lot lights, outside lighting around the building? What kind of impact to the surrounding properties with lighting?
Typically on a site like this, we'd have some pole lights at the parking lot with cutoffs, so there's no light, and providing photometrics as well, so no light escapes the site. And then we will probably have some, in the courtyard, for example, some low bollard-style lighting, just for safety of the residents, as well as probably the perimeter. Perimeter will have some just pedestrian lighting.
Walkway lighting?
Yeah, it's just at that level. There's no reason to provide any type of parking lot lighting, for example, around the fire access drive. So there we would just encourage that no one use that typically, and then that would just be used as walkway.
I also want to make a comment that, not design-wise, but marketability-wise, perception of safety is very important. That's the first thing, so we got to provide the appropriate lighting. Second thing is, we are building a building where there are residences, and so to Jim's point about the photometrics of it not escaping the site and not projecting out into the adjacent neighbors, that will be something that we're very, very cognizant of as we move forward into the site landscape and the site lighting.
So along those lines of security and saying that you're working with groups that are already currently managing properties similar to this, are there any type of security system, camera systems? I mean, this would currently be next to a vacant building. What type of security is provided on site? Is that a resident's responsibility or the?
No, it will be the building's responsibility. Cheryl, do you want to touch upon what you typically do in your building?
So basically, we'll have one key, one entry for all the seniors, and everything else would be locked. And so it's like usually in one area, and then they use an intercom to get other people into these facilities. But we would probably consider extra cameras, especially along the east side of this building, due to the old hospital being present.
So we will have definitively, so Cheryl's point, with the ingress and egress of the resident that lives there, it will be a safe place that will be fobbed to come in and come out. We have on-site management. Not necessarily will be there all night long, but we will have on-site management. But we will have cameras in dedicated places that truly does prevent and provides that safety. I wouldn't just say on the vacant hospital site, but throughout the entirety of the building. I mean, it's in our best interest to provide a safe environment for the residents that live there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So does your landscape plan include some landscape amenities along Ballard? Because it looks like you're pretty much just looking into the parking lot from,
There will be landscape screening along the entire length of Ballard as part of the landscape plan.
okay, and not even just screening, but enhancement, you know,
Yeah.
decorative shrubs that would.
Yes, there's a whole,
A mix,
yeah,
yeah.
there's a whole design for the front facade as well. It's not shown on this was very schematic, but that is in the process, yes.
Okay.
And in all honesty, it is designed with that intent, is to create an aesthetic that is pleasing along Ballard. And Mike, if you want to speak to anything there, you're more like, he's a civil guy, not a landscape guy, but he can probably speak to landscape.
Yeah, we're developing the landscape plan, and there'll be a minimum of street trees along Ballard, probably at about 35-foot centers, a row of deciduous and evergreen trees along the entire frontage.
But if you think brushes or something, this is again going back to engaging the community and the stakeholders. If that's something that we want to take into account, you would like us to look at, we are happy to look at that.
The flowering shrubs can soften that
Yeah.
view into the parking lot.
Yeah,
from
some nice
single family.
perennials, I would agree.
35 foot on center is nice for deciduous, but that's a lot of open space,
Mhm.
so. Commissioners, any other questions for Mr. Toomey, Mr. Pappas?
Just some comments. So I understand the requirements and the requirements you need to follow to make sure this works as far as financially. But I guess when I look at the project, you know, you identified, I believe it was either 4 or 5 deviations as well, and one of them includes density. You're actually more than doubling density of a regular M1. So, you know, I guess I get heartburn with 80. I don't know what number works, but I think 80 is too high. That's my personal opinion, especially with all the deviations. And although, you know, if we take away all those deviations and just give you a PUD, you're not going to be able to build the building, right? So we have to include PUD, including the deviations. That's number one. Number two, I need to understand and have a clear understanding of the public benefit, not so much for the residents of this complex, but of the surrounding residents. So if that, you know, talks about a bridge across the street or a walk across the street, sidewalks, expanded dog park, whatever it is, I need to understand that before I'm comfortable. So again, you know, we're going to give you a PUD, increase density. You want all these deviations on top of that. So I guess I need to understand what we're going to get back. So that's just my feeling.
Do you have specifics that you'd like to discuss?
No, I leave that up to you as the petitioner.
Thank you.
Yeah, I am also uncomfortable with the number 80 in such a small space, a little over 5 acres. I wish we could see the percentage total of open space where the storm retention area is planned for, the additional parking that I think is gonna be required. I am concerned also that only 7 handicap spots are listed when you're catering to a 55 plus. I realize most of us are probably close to 55 in one direction or the other, and we may not be handicapped, but if you're appealing to the average, you say 72, chances are there's a fair number north of 7 handicap parking vehicles in that group in that entire group. So I think 7 is a very low number, personally.
Sure.
So I think the parking
That's a
needs,
good comment. I think
parking
we
needs
can
some work.
accommodate that. I mean, that's a very fair comment.
And I am absolutely, and I'll tell the commissioners, I am absolutely on board with a development impact study. I think that's an absolute requirement to move this anywhere forward. Declaration of the public benefit, as Mr. Tominello stated. And I will just say, I appreciate your statement for the provision of the affordable housing for the aging population, but I don't consider that to be a public benefit. Sure, it's nice to have the ability to have a place to go to, and I'm sure you've done your research and you've seen the total number of senior facilities in Macomb County and surrounding area, compared to the percentage of vacant housing that's available in the multiple communities. Paving the road to the end of the property line, that's a positive. That's definitely a positive. I'm not saying to do that, but I think that's more of a positive than the provision of affordable housing. So we would definitely want to see stormwater retention, all of the parts and pieces for looping in the water main, the connectivity to the services, clear declaration of the 25% open space. Definitely a development impact study where traffic is concerned, the hit on the public utilities and the environmental impact. An upgrade to the parking considerations. A clear lighting impact, security impact. Additional screening around the dog park and the garden area. Separating the residential to the north and the old hospital facility to the east. And then some additional thought, taking into consideration Mr. Mulder's comment about the site impact of a 3-story building, considering the surrounding height, landscaping, and so on.
May I ask a question through the chair? I'm guessing,
Yes.
Carol, you are
Yeah.
the chair
Yep.
to Adam. So the development impact study as it relates to the PUD agreement, are those two separate things?
Yes,
They
yes, a separate statement, although you could, it ought to be a separate report or letter or however you want to address it. You could probably pull some information from your development impacts, or your development, PUD development agreement,
Into the development impact statement.
into the development impact statement if you'd like to. Yeah, it's really just a report that kind of addresses those key topics that are listed in the ordinance: land use, natural features, utilities.
Okay.
And just make sure that you provide them with some additional information about, how your proposed development would impact those utilities, or how those utilities would be able to serve the development.
Yep, understood, thank you.
Traffic studies.
Adam, do you happen to have the actual wording for the development impact study handy, for everyone to see what exactly that considers?
Yep.
Because I know in the past we've waived certain areas based on the use, but I'd like to look at each of the items.
Yep. 3.07. 6. Okay. Look, some information they've already provided, a concept plan, location map, the zoning of adjacent properties. Concept plan, they've already provided this. So here's kind of where it gets into it. So land use impacts, a narrative that addresses your proposed land use. So again, information that you've probably already put down on paper, just make sure to put it into this kind of separate development impact report. Hours of operation, how natural features will be preserved, groundwater quality, they talked about, stormwater improvements, they can explain that more clearly. And impact on public utilities, they talked about a loop system, how that would be an improvement, they can explain that a little bit more in depth. Some of the things they've kind of already, talked about, residents, employees, public impact on, police, fire, emergency services, maybe, ambulance trips, things of that nature, vehicle access in and out of the site. They're showing the fire lane that loops around the building. And then the traffic impacts, counts, existing counts, trip generation, what they talked about, numbers that demonstrate what this senior development would generate.
Okay.
On this traffic study or traffic impact, Adam, I have a question. We heard from the applicant that what is proposed is actually a reduction in traffic from what would be allowed as zoned if developed that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the study, do you look at the current traffic condition versus what the traffic study shows would be an increase based on current conditions, or based on conditions that would be in place if maximum traffic as zoned?
I think it's very relevant to have an analysis of, if it was developed as currently zoned, what could it be versus what they're proposing, and in that sense, they could call the difference, a public benefit, So I think that's very relevant and important.
Any other questions for us, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Peppers?
No, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in front of you, and so we will take into consideration many of these comments. I know that the two over there were taking notes, he's taking notes. I'm sure
And
Sabrina has some meeting minutes too, so.
I didn't get your last name, Cheryl.
Cheryl McCallum, MC.
McCallum?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for us right now?
No, I think, Eric did thoroughly answer everything that we needed.
Okay. And the gentleman, the landscape guy?
Yeah, I'm Mike Palmer.
Oh, I'm sorry, so much
Yeah.
here. I apologize.
I'm the civil engineer, land
Thank you.
surveyor, and landscape
There
architect.
we go, okay.
Jack of all trades.
And we'll be addressing the traffic also.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, what was your last name, sir?
Palmier.
POLMEAR.
Thank you.
Well, as far as some of the waivers or the considerations of what's different, personally, I don't have a problem doing the screening or green belt in lieu of a berm. So that, I don't have a problem with that personally. I think the building length is not a problem if it can, if the overall design of the building is something that it fits in with the character.
Yeah. Well, I
Not
think-
only of the neighborhood, but I do appreciate the attempt to try to attain a nautical theme in the district, the overlay district. The height, I'm not sold on the height. I appreciate a pitched roof. I think that does give more character than a flat roof, but 3 stories is fairly imposing for that street. Even next to the hospital is still kind of a low cottage look to it. So I'm not sold on the height. And then the density, I guess if you're able to provide more information about the calculation of where you're arriving at that need to make the project work. Because if there were a way to make it work with slightly less density, I think that would be something I would consider more favorably. Personally, this is just my personal.
I can agree with all that.
Understood. So if I may, to the chair, is to say, when we talked about credit efficiency, there's also there's scoring points that you have to get. In the most recent round of this, you have to score above, in the most recent round where the winners were awarded, I don't know, maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, you have to be kind of in that 95 to 100 scoring. So I think what we could come back with in the next meeting is to kind of give you an overall of how this project scores based on that density, so that you can, it's not just a financial equation, it's also the scoring equation that's stipulated by the state. So we can come back and show you very transparently what it does, and we'll study that ourselves. And maybe there's an opportunity to look at the density. Like, can't guarantee it, but we'll, between Cheryl and I, we will look at the scoring and the financial feasibility of what it would look like with 80 units or maybe a little bit less to address your comments.
And I appreciate your explanation of the housing tax credits. It's a very complicated tool, I
Yeah.
guess, that's out there. And even professionals don't always understand how that works and what the goal of that program is. So anything else that you could do to kind of explain what the competition is and what then, how those tax credits work? Like you're
Totally.
actually selling them on the market, right?
We are, indeed.
So,
Yeah.
and it's just a very complicated tool, but it's one that's used all over the place
It
in the
is
country.
it is the tool of tools. It is the tool to create affordable housing throughout the country. And, you know, I can provide you with a quick explanation here if you'd like. You typically sell them to banks. When banks buy them, the incentive is to offset their income tax liability. So if they have a bunch of income tax over that 10, 15-year period, they can utilize those tax credits, and they buy them at not necessarily a dollar for dollar value, but a little bit less than $1 to the developer, and then they utilize them to offset their income tax. In addition to that, there's a thing called the Community Reinvestment Act, and the Community Reinvestment Act states that banks have to invest into projects that are not typically market rate. And so when they get those credits, the CRA credits, they get those through the buying of the tax credits. And so what you'll find is they are able to then, by getting the CRA credit, to continue to invest in market rate projects. So it's the federal government's or the IRS's attempt at incentivizing investments into below market rate projects, so they continue to invest into market rate projects. And I'm not just speaking about housing in general, but banks invest in tons of things. And so they're the typical buyer. And there's groups out there that create funds that commingle a bunch of different banks together, and they buy those tax credits as a syndicator on behalf of the lending institutions. So it is complicated, but it is the one tool that's utilized to build affordable. And with all due respect, I do believe affordable housing is broadly speaking, is a public benefit, and that is why this mechanism is available to us.
So I think you kind of touched on it with explaining the way banks invest. Is it any banks or local banks investing in local projects, or is it just anyone can invest in a project anywhere in the country to help offset?
So some banks have different appetites. So it could be more. It's more so regional, national banks than it typically is local banks. The reason is their income tax liability is so much greater than a local bank, and so they are able to utilize the tax credits more efficiently than a local bank could, just based on volume, if you will.
So I realize that this is preliminary, and should this move forward, we would want to see more definitive calculations, numbers, dimensions, feet, size, examples of what the apartments would look like, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, 1.5. Some of the common elements that the common support, maybe a little more explanation of what those are planned to be, could be.
I think if you went into more detail on the AMI as well, that would help, those income ranges for each
Sure.
of those categories.
Sure.
And then maybe compare that to, Harrison Township census tracts, or, so that people
That's a
can
great
really
idea.
see what that means, because it's, again, is kind of a complex formula.
Totally get it, and we just didn't put it on the slide. We have
Yeah,
them right here,
absolutely.
but we're happy to create another slide that provides that context
I
for
think
all
that
of you.
helps.
Okay.
Yeah, and clean up the items. Obviously, you have a copy of Mr. Young's letter. Well, I should ask, do you have a copy of Mr. Young's letter?
I do have a copy of
You
Mr.
do,
Young's
okay,
letter.
so
Thank
you are
Sabrina,
presented
for
with
providing that to
with
me.
the items that we've been openly discussing this evening, so.
Once the development is full, is there typically waiting lists to get into these units?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Typically, there are waiting lists to get into these units. There's great demand. The demand for this we all know the baby boomers are aging, and we all know the baby boomers not necessarily can afford $3,300 a month in independent living. So we believe as developers and operators that this will lease, and we will have waiting lists.
Okay.
And I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe that the AHEPA project is full and is doing quite well. So as far as occupancy and what have you.
Okay, great, thank you.
And
Yes.
you had mentioned that, Cheryl, your Cleveland Housing, what is it, Cleveland Housing Network. So is this facility going to be a part of an existing network where, what is it, Find a Place for Your Mother? A lot of the senior care companies that offer services to help a family place a member, is this going to be a part of that as well?
So, we develop senior housing, but Common Sale helps with some of the services for seniors. And so we will be the property manager of the development, and Common Sale will include some of the services that they already provide into this facility, and so we'll have a combination of that, yes. So we manage over 2,200 units throughout Ohio and Michigan.
And then could you provide a list of those other
Absolutely.
Michigan
Yeah.
facilities?
Yes.
That would be great. Yeah, a lot of us are geeks for details. Okay, Mr. Muir, anything else to add?
No, no ma'am.
Okay, let me publicly apologize for my, and that I meant no disrespect.
I did not take it that way.
Thank
No-
you.
No apology necessary.
Thank you, kind sir.
This is the smartest civil engineer you ever met in your life.
I know about those
And the
engineers.
smartest architect, and the smartest affordable housing
We could
developer
not
right
survive without engineers. Okay, all right. Any other questions, commissioners?
I just want to point out that the county does have new development standards for post-construction stormwater management. So it would, if you're not aware of that, you might want to take a look at those because they are updated.
Yes, thank you. We are aware of those, and I've already discussed that with your consulting engineer.
Okay. So heavy on the infiltrations.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's all clay.
Macomb County,
Yeah, Macomb County,
Eastern.
close to water. Okay. Okay, so you've heard our suggestions, our potential
Wow.
list of requests?
there. Loud and clear.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, commissioners, anything else? Okay, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Pappas, anything else?
No, just again, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
McGowan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your information. Okay. Thank you for coming.
Should they have
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will end our preliminary review of the proposed affordable independent living and multiple family development. I don't believe we have any other business on the agenda, there's nothing listed. Mr. Young, any comments?
No comments from me.
Okay, then we will go ahead and take comments from the floor. I will please ask this, if a comment, you're welcome to come up and speak. If something's been mentioned, we will have it written, we will have it recorded. So please don't mention something that's already been mentioned. Make your questions clear so that the applicants can take note as well. No rude comments, none, will not be tolerated, so thank you for that. And I am gonna limit you to 3 minutes each, just because that's our general limitation, but there's a sizable group here, so if someone would like to come up and ask a question, please. And please let us know who you are and and what your address is, please.
Over that, because it's not working. William Vogan, I live at 25895 Council Lane, and I'm going to start out with, On the drawing there, you didn't have a wall between the R1 and the residential area, and I don't believe, I think that might be something to do with the township, that they have an ordinance saying that, or, I gotta do this quick because I only have 3 minutes. This property was wetlands, and it was illegally filled. Originally, that was the low spot in the whole area. That was swampland, and there is no drainage for that property. So I don't know how they're gonna handle that, but it was illegally filled. And like Mr. Tominello asked, what is the public benefit to the neighborhood? I mean, extending the street to the end of it doesn't help us. I really haven't seen a benefit to the neighborhood yet. The LoRa, if you cannot fill it with low income, under 55 people in the LoRa, does that mean somebody younger than 55 can move in if they fit the low income feasibility of the paperwork you had on, you know, I don't remember how it was written, but there was a chart there. And parking spots, visitor parking spots. How many visitor parking spots do you have? You have a bunch of 2 bedrooms, so if there's 2 different people living in that one 2-bedroom apartment, there would be more than 2 cars, presumably. And the height, it doesn't fit into the neighborhood. If you went to all 1-bedroom apartments, you might be able to squeeze more of them into 2 floors and still meet your criteria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Karczewski, 36175 Marillac, Harrison Township. I'm going to apologize if I ask any questions. I know I won't get the answers right away, but I'm hoping I will get them. If you ask these questions, I'm sorry because I cannot hear you. I had walked around the neighborhood, talked to the neighbors that live there. These are some of the questions that they have asked. They like to know, does the people that are planning this, do they own the whole area where the hospital was, and plus this? Because this is separate from the hospital. That's one of the questions. Is a PUD only for this area, or is it for everything on the property? The whole hospital property, since they own it all, if they do, okay? They said it's, they wanted to know how many units are gonna be for low income. They said 9%, but I just saw the 9% now, but they would like to know exactly how many units. They also like to know what this is gonna cost, since this is supposed to be independent living and multifamily. So your 2-bedroom, does that mean that my son could move in with me? Even though he's not 55, that's what they wanna know. Okay, let's see, I'm just trying to read everything I have written here. I'm sorry about that. Okay, one of the other questions is the road. Part of the road, Ballard, is paved. Most of it is dirt road. Okay, what's gonna happen with that? And the sewer. When the hospital was there, we had a lot of problems with the sewer. We can't even get the ditches cleaned out now. And so this was one of the problems that we have. Everything goes down towards Jefferson, okay? I live on Marillac. Before my water could come out of my street, all the water that's gonna come down Ballard, Homeview, Edmond, will come before ours. We get flooded. My neighbor's property is flooded all the time, okay? Okay, the parking, I heard him say something about the parking. You got 80 parking spaces, you got 80 units. If everybody has a car, which mostly they do because this is independent living, so they're gonna be driving. If I wanna come visit mom and dad, where do I park? Okay, that was it. They said the benefit would be the dog park. How is anybody getting to that dog park? They're gonna walk through this whole complex to get to that dog park?
It's not for us.
The garden, you got nine what would you call it? My mind just went blank. For planning, we at the senior center, we have 5 up there, okay? The other thing was, that I noticed on the plan, is that you have 1 elevator for 80 units. So, even if there's 2 people in a unit, just think of them trying to use 1 elevator. They're not gonna walk those stairs. I deal with seniors every single day, and I'm telling you, they do not walk stairs, okay? And walking to,
Your 3 minutes are,
Pardon
your
me?
3 minutes are up.
my 2 minutes are up,
3 minutes are up.
my 3 minutes are up.
Your 3 minutes are up.
I give her my 3 minutes.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
If you want these people to walk to the senior center, how are they gonna walk? There's no sidewalks, you got a dirt road. What's the benefit of that? I'm sorry, that was mostly about what they, and has anybody ever talked to the neighbors that live right there? The construction, Mrs. Barnes that lived there, she just came out of the hospital. Has anybody ever talked to this woman and asked her about this? About what she would like on the side of her house? How about the people across the street? You got 2 entrances going in and out. If everybody's car, that's 80 cars coming out. On a 2-lane road. Part of it is dirt. The traffic light on the corner, you're lucky. And I'm telling you, you're lucky if you get 3 cars to go out when it turns green. It is very bad, it's very bad. And then you got across their building that boat launch across the street. So can you imagine, both of them kind of go out. So, and to me, there's no benefit for the people in the neighborhood. All right, thank you.
My name is Catherine Whitney, 26580 Ballard Street. I live across the street from where you like to build. My house sits back from the road, across the street from you people. That property was, as the gentleman mentioned, on Campbell Lane, that property was filled. That was a vernal pond. It had water in there. I used to go back and watch the birds myself. That vernal pond is down my front yard. My front yard is full of water most of the time. That's why it's not mowed, because there's a couple of patches we can mow, but most of it is water. It's finally drying out now, but just so you know that. That's my point, basically. So I'm concerned about your taking away waters, the drainage issues, because the water has to go somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Whitney, I also live at 26580 Ballard. 2 concerns. One is with the 3 stories plus the roof, is lack of privacy. It'll completely alter the privacy for us, in my estimation, and probably for the adjacent neighbors, and probably for several houses away on each side and across the street. Secondly, there is this other property called the hospital. Now, let's say that this goes through and you have all this activity comes in with this property. What's going on there? Is this, it's what's next? And how is it going to fit together? Because I think that strategically that needs to be done, somehow looked at together rather than just here, and then whoops, we'll bring in something else again that could be significantly larger.
Thank you.
I'm Janet Adamski. My house is 26725 Campo Lane. I am outside the back of that hospital property. My question is where this senior building proposed, do they own the property all the way out to Campo Lane side, or does it stop prior to that? Because if there's a back entrance off of Campo Lane, forever, during boating season, to go to Kroger's, you have to go turn right, catch the expressway, come back around Metro Parkway, because boating traffic is heavy and you cannot get left off of Combo Lane during high season. My other question is it talks about multifamily dwelling. So are these homes going to be only, let's say you put in houses, what percentage of the property is the senior building, what is left over for multiple family units? And is that strictly for 55 community? Is it going to be low income housing? Myself, along with probably a lot of the residents, would take issue with that. Those are my questions. Thank you for taking this into consideration.
My name is Matt Babcock. I live at 26640 Ballard, which is directly across the street from this proposed development. I think initially when I heard about this, I was concerned and frustrated, and I think now I'm getting angry about it. It frustrates me. It doesn't fit into the surrounding area whatsoever. There's nothing 3 stories currently. I appreciate your attempts to make it look nautical. It did not. Nothing with a big, long 150-foot face is going to look appropriate on this block. This is a neighborhood now, and it will no longer be that way the same. The surrounding homes all have approximately an acre or 3/4 of an acre lot, and we're now asking to put 80 residents in 5 acres, which makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't understand that whatsoever. So there's going to be a bunch of impacts related to all those things. You know, I think I really do not see a benefit to our community as a whole. You know, I've looked at like the Downtown Development Authority pieces of information that have been created from the boards in the past, and I don't see how this fits those. It doesn't make any sense to me to put this here. I feel, you know, as if we wanted to build this type of a property, it would make more sense to put it on a main thoroughfare rather than inside of a neighborhood. We've got multiple properties in our area that could support that. One being at the end of Ballard on the corner, or over at Jefferson and Shook, or over by Prentice or Calawork Field. That seem like they would make a lot more sense for something of this magnitude. And I really want to focus on that word magnitude because this is huge. I mean, it's gigundous. And so for me, that's you know, desperately frustrating. I don't think they're accurate when they talk about the light impact. You know, this is the front of my house. And I think there's going to be property value impacts, you know, that are significant too. I think if we look at, you know, if you look at studies, they show that sometimes these types of developments can increase or not impact property development, but that's not true when you look at property developments in our area with our income typical property types. I don't think any one of you would want one across from your house. I don't want one across from mine. I'm definitely opposed to this.
Thank you.
My name is Thomas Arnold. I live at 26135 Ballard Street. I am new to this area. I moved in 2.5 years ago. The reason I moved in is because it has a nice, comforting community. It's quiet. And I live far down on the street. But we do have random people who do whiz down our street. And human curiosity will pull people to go, oh, whoa, what's at the end of the street? So it's not even impacting traffic at the beginning of the street across from people that are there. It will affect us all the way down at the other end.
I'm Mario Moraldo. I live at 25999 Ballard. Oh, I've been here for 42 years. In that period of time, I've seen a HEPA go up. I used to snowmobile across that empty field before Kroger's was there. Now, I notice, and I'm sure others that live in the township in my area have noticed, more than once, the fire department is always at HEPA or is always at the towers.
Yeah.
How much property tax is this place going to pay so that we can support the additional fire department runs
to this place because people are over 55 and they are gonna have issues there. Just like they have them at HEPA, they have them at the other place. Does this mean that my property taxes are gonna go up to support this place on my street? And I understand the difficulty in finding low-income housing. Now, my mother's been passed away a long time ago, but she waited 3 years to get into Blossom Heath, which is the same kind of place that they're talking about. It's based on her income. And I can still remember her complaining that there were ladies that she associated with there that were paying $7 a month less rent than she was. You know, I mean, and so it is an issue, and it is, I'm sure that there is a shortage of that property out there even now, like it was 30 years ago. But, you know, and hopefully I can stay in my house for a while longer. I like it there. And just like the gentleman said before, it's quiet there, yet I'm right in an area where I can get to Kroger's if I want to go there. I can walk there, okay? I just don't like the character of the street changing that much. I've grown accustomed to the hospital there. I've grown accustomed to the kind of roof it's got. It's a 2-story structure, and whether the police are lying to me or not, but they say the place is falling apart, stay out of there. You know, why wasn't that considered? Thank you for giving me your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Very good.
How's it going? My name is Mark Eichner. I live at 27037 Ballard.
Speak up, please.
I talk a little quiet. If I talk any louder, you're
I'm
gonna
gonna
think I'm
ask you to
yelling at you. So, I have 3 kids and a wife, and I just don't think the traffic is gonna be good. It's gonna be more unwanted traffic. If anything, I think a couple of houses need to be built there instead. Then you'll have a lot less traffic, raise the property value. It'll just be right better that way. And I just don't think the traffic will be good. That's my biggest concern is the traffic.
Thank you.
Yep.
C. William Bardell, 25-year resident. I don't live on the street, I live on Point Rosa, but I've seen this happen all the time in our Harrison Township in my 25 years. The fact that we're having this meeting on Independence Day weekend, you know, we talk about full disclosure, but we're having this meeting today. People have went out of town. The applicant wants everything. There's a density issue. There's no public benefit. They want everything. No berm. I mean, I don't know where it ends. So my thing is, again, is the density. And as far as these big, long 150-foot lengths, I see nothing romantic about that building at all. Nothing. I'm trying to find something good about it, but I can't. I've seen better senior assisted living PUDs in Lapeer. All brick, all have balconies, way better architecture than that. I see nothing romantic about that architecture at all. Nothing on God's green earth I see good about it. The density, no berm, I don't know where it ends. So, and I see it happening all the time. Thinking they come in here, you know, they're going to pull a bushwhack on us, you know, bushwhack us. And they've done it. They try to do it over on 16 and Jefferson. Put one of those in there. 16 Prentice and Jefferson over there in the corner. I've seen them bushwhack us for 25 years, and this is just another bushwhack. So, again, density, roof height, design, terrible design, no public benefit. And, you know, they act surprised like, gee golly, gee, public benefit. Well, you know, if you've been an architect or you've been in the trade for 50 years, you know when you're getting bushwhacked. So thank you for listening. Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you, Mr.
Shannon Riley O'Neill, 26129 Ballard. My problem is really with the board because throughout the years, it's progressed to being rezoned. You know, Mr. Vogel said it was wetlands. That's when I moved there, that's what I wanted. And somehow, magically, it gets approved that I kept calling and saying, how can they just keep putting dirt in? If you put 6 inches of dirt on, it kills the trees. Well, he can do that, he's getting fined. So to me, it's, if you are rich, you can do whatever you want. And we let them do that, and you continue to just destroy the beauty of Harrison Township, which is the trees and the animals. And I hope that you guys can stop this. I mean, 3 stories, those people on Campbell Lane have Metro Towers behind them, and now they're gonna have this 3-story on the other side. They don't even live in the woods anymore. That's all I have to say.
Probably not used to seeing me around.
No, hello, it's good to see you.
Jim Senstock, 31698, San Juan. I've looked at this site, and you know what? I think the gentleman earlier made a clear point. It may not be bad for a different location, but it's terrible for this location. It doesn't meet the size requirements, it's too tall, it's too long, it doesn't have enough, the density's out of sight, all of that. And it's going to have to meet the special land use provisions. And that is one of the first one that's listed says, the proposed use shall be of such location, size, and character. Well, you've listened to the character of the neighborhood, that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding neighborhood and applicable regulations of the zoning district in which it is to be located. So, you know what? You know, I appreciate they did a nice presentation, but the fact of the matter is it don't belong there. And I think that probably they could save themselves a lot of money by not bringing it back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever it's supposed to be. Because I don't see how you could conceivably, as a planning commission, go ahead and move forward with this and approve it for a PUD to recommend to the township board. Because at the township board meeting, there's going to be a lot more than these people there. There's going to be a lot more. This ain't the whole neighborhood. So I'm telling these guys, I'm saying it so that they can hear it, so that you can hear it. Don't move forward. See you later.
Good evening, Board. Randy LaForest, 39201 Prentice, in the center of the township. However, I grew up on Shook. My family moved out here in '54. So I'm a hell of a lot older than most of you on that board. Been here a hell of a lot longer than most of you. I know where a lot of the things have gone and been switched. Metro Towers. Brittany Park. Brittany Park was supposed to be L'Anse Creuse South. But somewhere along the line, got traded. Brittany Park went in. We had a manufacturing industrial corridor. Now it's agricultural, you're growing. The easiest thing to do to settle this, you rezone all the time
And by the way, before I get back to that, both of those things that Jim referred to, or maybe it was Mr. Bardell, the Callaware property and the property at Chicken Jefferson also had proposals for similar things. And it didn't fly. And, but what I'm trying to say is just rezone that whole area back to residential. It was, the hospital was there. In fact, my daughter was one of the last babies born there when they had a maternity ward, when it was Harrison Community Hospital. And there wasn't a lot of noise. The ambulances always turned the sirens off. There just wasn't a lot of traffic. But what's proposed now, they want everything from you but the kitchen sink at the expense of the residents. So just rezone it back and let the people who own that land sell it in parcels and let it be built on if it's buildable. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, my name is Barry Walsh, 36162 Marillac. I heard it mentioned earlier about what the traffic could be and what the units proposed, you know, the traffic that it would bring. Could be isn't now. I mean, we all know that. We know that with Tucker Park, you know, especially in the summertime. I mean, it is good though, you know, there's kids playing T-balls with, you know, T-ball with their families and whatnot. The boat launch adds significant traffic to the area. I think this would make it unsustainable, and as many of the residents have said, you know, this is a sleepy neighborhood. It's quiet. That's why people move there. I think this would be a burden. I think the people that are trying to propose this project just do not understand the neighborhood whatsoever. Yep, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll say
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Donnie Strobeck. I live at 26660 Ballard Street. We're directly across the street. I was born and raised in that house, and I just bought it off my parents about 1.5 years ago. And when I heard about this, I think it's ridiculous that it's even a thing that a 3-story building could be built in a residential area like this. I know the hospital is there and what it's zoned for, but what the last lady said about just zone it back to residential, I mean, it's a quiet neighborhood, and we don't need a 3-story building directly across the street from us or in that area.
Thank you. Okay. If no other public comment, our next scheduled meeting is July 21st, 2022. That is our normal, regular planning commission meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Mr. Bloom?
Support.
Mr. Mulder, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, for coming.